Thomas Leblanc, Solid Waste Operations Manager, here to kind of explain the process and what our guys do on a daily basis. So the waste management trucks come in through the Class 1 transfer station. So a Class 1 transfer station is basically what you would put in your trash can at home, and then you would put in your trash can at the road. A waste management truck comes and picks up. And all that trash goes into a waste management truck, which they eventually drive into the Class 1 transfer station. So the basic flow of the Class 1 transfer station, Walton County has a Class 1 transfer station as opposed to a Class 1 landfill. So what that means is basically all the household waste that you would put on in your trash can and put it ultimately in your garbage cans that's collected by a waste hauler is then brought to this transfer station. It's dumped onto the floor, pick it up from there and put it into a larger transfer trailer, which is then shipped to Spring Hill Landfill in Jackson County. And the reason you do that is just because it's more economical. You can imagine how much gas would be used to basically run those smaller trucks that pick up your bins outside your house and run those all the way to landfill and come all the way back. And to do that again, there'd be a lot of hours burned, a lot of gas burned for that. So basically we picked a strategic location where it would be economical for them to drive here, drop it off, and then load it to a larger trailer and bring that to the landfill. And so basically it's loaded here and it's brought to the landfill in Jackson County. If you've ever been in a transfer station, you kind of know the smell. It's a harsh environment, but these guys do a good job working with it, and they come in every day and they do a great job. They move a lot of waste each day. As you can see, there's a lot of liquids that's produced, and we got to make sure we manage that per FDP. We have to make sure we contain the leachate inside this building. We do a good job of doing that and washing down the floor and moving that leachate out off the floor and into the force main and ultimately to the wastewater treatment plant. Another aspect that they have to deal with is sometimes, if a truck comes in with what we would call a hot load, a load that's smoking or smoldering, they would then shut down the operation, move anyone that was in the building out of the building, and then bring in what we call the hydroseeder to come and put that fire or that smoldering pile out and make sure it's out, and then they can continue the operation. So that's one of the aspects. We do have like a hot load area that we ask the waste management trucks if they notice that their load might be of concern, they'll go out, dump it outside the building. We'll deal with it there, but it's a dynamic environment. That's something that we kind of have to work with. One of the other things that we have on the landfill is the brush pile. So any resident of Walton County is allowed to bring their yard waste here. Waste management does do some collection. They'll bring it over there and dump as well. And what we do there is we basically have an excavator there, an operator operating the excavator, and he's picking up the brush and putting it into that tub grinder, and it grinds it up and turns it into mulch. And we actually reuse that mulch. We went through FDEP and permitted. When we get to the Class 3 landfill, per FDEP and the permit, you have to cover that waste weekly. And typically the standard is to use soil, but we want to make sure we're conserving as much soil and not just wasting it. So we actually permitted and had an alternative to the permit where we do a 50-50 mix of the mulch with the soil. What we'll do is we'll scoop up the mulch and we bring it to the top of the hill to cover the waste as well, along with the soil. One of our other operations is we have a Class 3 landfill. There's a pretty big difference between a Class 1 landfill and a Class 3 landfill. Class 1 landfill has organic waste in it, so that organic waste breaks down. When it's raining, there's water that filtrates through the landfill basically, and so here in Walton County we don't bury our household waste. We actually, like I said, drop it off the transfer station and it's brought to a landfill in Jackson County. With the Class 1 landfill, there's a lot more that goes into it if you think about what you're putting in your garbage can as to what's put into a dumpster for construction. There's a major difference between the two. Class 3, it's really just construction and demolition stuff. There's a good bit of metal that will get in there that we pick out, but for the most part, there's very little material that gets broken down organically. So with that, with the Class 1 landfill, the leachate, so if you think about a landfill, there's rain, that water percolates through the whole system and eventually makes its way down, and that water that's produced at the bottom can have some metals in it. It can have some characteristics that you want to collect. So these systems are actually designed with a liner system. Another big difference with the Class 1 and a Class 3 is the Class 1, because of all that organic material breaking down, it produces gas. So you typically would want to collect gas and flare it off and everything. So because we only have a Class 3, that isn't as much of a concern. There isn't as much breaking down of the material. and we direct people up here. We get a lot of residents that come in that are bringing in their construction debris, and we bring it up there. And we direct them to the tipping area, is what we call it. And after several loads, our guys jump on the dozer and they push the waste into, kind of spread the pile out as thin as they can, and then they'll come over with a compactor and kind of compact that waste, because with a landfill, you want to make sure you're conserving as much airspace as possible. You don't want to eat up the airspace. With FDEP, we make sure that, we permit a maximum height of a landfill, given that there's calculations that go into how steep the slopes can be, and so they don't give out on you. And there's also, you have to factor in for some settlement. Now with the Class 3 landfill, there's not as much settlement as a Class 1 landfill, because Class 3 doesn't have producible waste. There's no organic waste in there that's kind of breaking down, and that eventually will cause, if you had something buried and it breaks down a little bit, to settle a little bit. So we don't have very much of that going on with the Class 3. But anyway, the guys will spread it out and compact it, get it as tight as they can, and then they'll come over with the mulch and the sand and put it on top of that and cover that as needed. We also want to make sure we have a couple guys on top of the landfill who are watching what gets dumped. Once again, you don't want to dump anything that we're not permitted to dump. There's other aspects, like putting tires in the landfill is a big no-no through FDEP, so we make sure we find every tire and we pick that up and bring that off the top of the hill and don't bury those as well. And there's other things you don't want, paints and batteries or anything like that in the landfill. We do the best that we can to make sure we're collecting those and getting those off before we bury them. We are actually getting to the end of this Class 3 landfill's life. It's got about a year and a half of filling before we're at the permitted height. So we had another Class 3 landfill built to the east of it. It's a 10-acre cell. Right now there's a rain tarp on it, and we'll actually be in the process of, you want to be careful what kind of waste you put in there. You don't want to put any sharp metals or concrete initially on top of the liner, because you could pierce the liner that's collecting the leachate. So we'll kind of be in the process of like what you would call flooring out that landfill, and we'll start a new cell. Right now with the recycling, we have trailers kind of strategically placed throughout the county, and residents can choose to bring their recyclables there and put their recyclables in there. Then ultimately those trailers are picked up by our personnel. They bring them back here, they weigh in and weigh out, so we record that data, tip that the recyclables onto a floor, which is then hand sorted by specific material types. So your plastics, which is your number ones, your PETs, or your number twos, which is HDPE. You think about your milk jugs and your laundry detergents. Then you also have your mixed papers, which are like your newspapers, your magazines, office paper, and then cardboard is another category as well. And then you have aluminum cans and tins. So those are all hand sorted, picked through what goes into those trailers, put into their specific commodities, and those are ultimately brought to the balers, baled and crushed, wrapped up, and stored off to the side, which is eventually, when we collect enough of it, will be picked up by a trailer and brought to a broker to process it and turn it into other products. Multiple moving parts, multiple problem solvings, tasks that kind of go on. You kind of have to bob and weave with all the things that go on out here. It's a very dynamic environment and heavy use environment, and it's but I think generally we all kind of have a lot of fun out here and get our job done and enjoy what we do. It's a very necessary, important role in society to deal with trash, and we enjoy it.